Well, hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Here we are on a Wednesday, the 3rd of April, 2019. And we have a bit of a powerhouse storm that developed last night off the North Carolina coast. It skimmed coastal New Jersey. It skimmed Long Island. There wasn't really a whole lot of rain out of this, nor was there much wind. Basically, the back edge of the rain lined up right at about New York City, maybe a little bit further west than that for a short time, and that was it. But the pounding did occur in southeastern New England and then continued on up the coast toward Maine and into Nova Scotia, which is where the weather system is at the moment. So we've got a couple of satellite views here. I'm going to start off with the visible satellite loop, and I rolled it back a number of hours because of the sunset, so you start to see the clouds go dark there on the visible. But this was a really well-defined cyclone that did develop. From the standpoint of pressure, when I show you on the surface map, it's not overly deep, but all the upper features kind of got one on top of each other, and it made for a very good-looking storm last night when it was off the North Carolina coast. That comma head developed. You had some pretty fierce thunderstorms that formed in a ring around the center, and that cyclone now, as I said, making landfall in Nova Scotia and moving toward the northeast, and of course it's had some impact here on our weather on the backside. A lot of that impact actually was positive, because if you look at it from this particular view, from the Atlantic view on the GO 16, it was as cloud-free as it ever gets around here. That deep cyclone basically sucking all the moisture out of the air. Plus you had, if you look up in upstate New York, there's that upper trough. If you remember, we were dealing with two short waves here, that southern stream short wave, the northern stream coming down, and now the northern stream energy is moving across southern Canada and through upstate New York and northern New England, kind of lifting this storm up and out. But at the same time, it's caused those winds to kick in during this afternoon and this evening. We've had some gusts up to 40 miles an hour or more. And with the bone dry conditions, the very low dew points, temperatures in the 60s, dew points, I didn't get a chance to look at the actual specific dew points. I'll give it a look in a second. But I'll bet you they're down in the 20s. So we still have these red flag issues going on, the red flag warning that is in effect for New Jersey and for Pennsylvania. That's going to go for another couple of hours. I want to see if I can bring up, a lot of my maps disappeared. That's always good to know. There's one hiding behind here. Nope, there isn't. So anyhow, you get the idea, folks. This was this powerhouse now moving away. And one good thing out of all of this is all the dry air that's been pulled into the east is going to at least keep us dry for one more day. I think we're looking at a pretty decent Thursday, although temperatures are going to be a bit lower overall. Here's the surface map this evening. And there's your low center on the 18Z map, which is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You've got that wrapped up low, the occlusion sweeping up toward the coast. The lowest pressure on the when this was analyzed at 985 millibars. Now, we've seen them much deeper than this. I mean, we've seen them down into the 950s sometimes. But at least from the standpoint of how this all set up, but with regards to the upper air, you basically had all the levels just going at full throttle here as the low lift up. And of course the gradient is still a bit on the tight side. It's not super tight, but it is tight enough. And there's a weather front that moved through right around 2 o'clock in the afternoon across Connecticut, New York City, and down through central New Jersey. And it was once that front passed that you had the winds really kick up strongly from the west, and eventually they'll be going out to the west-northwest. We have a little bit of severe weather activity for today. We're going to get to that in a second, but I just want to show you the severe weather risk that is coming up for tomorrow. We have a rather large area of marginal to slight risk across the lower Mississippi Valley and the central Gulf Coast from East Texas all the way into the Florida Panhandle. And there's that slight risk covering much of Louisiana down to New Orleans, the southwestern part of Mississippi, southern Arkansas, and extreme eastern Texas. Severe weather has been rather quiet. It has flared up a little bit today, and we do actually have a little bit of thunderstorm activity that's starting to break out in the general area where the severe weather risk is being indicated for today. And that area is, see if that's the map. Do I have it? Yes, it is. So here's the Storm Prediction Center's severe weather outlook for this evening. And as of 6:06 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:06 Central, we do have one working severe thunderstorm watch box that has been put up in western Oklahoma, right inside that area of slight risk, and then you see the area of marginal risk goes further to the east. So tomorrow, I think, is going to wind up being a bit more of an active day with the Gulf of Mexico opened up and bringing in some Gulf moisture getting involved, and the higher dew points that are going to result from all of this. But you can see some action breaking out now in North Texas and in western Oklahoma on the radar. We also have some other showers and rain moving up into parts of Nebraska, eastern Nebraska, over into Iowa and southeastern South Dakota. Out in the west, pretty quiet in California for a change, at least today, and also up in the northwest, just some scattered activity there. And we have some rain and snow showers going on in parts of the northern Rockies. So the west, at least, has taken a little bit of a break today. Things have eased somewhat. The watches and warnings tonight from the Weather Service, there really isn't a whole lot going on from that respect. You've got those red flag warnings up for eastern Pennsylvania in through New Jersey. Those are going to expire around 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. You also have them for New Mexico and parts of West Texas. That salmon color is the severe thunderstorm watch box that is up. And remember, as always, when it comes to severe weather, if you're watching this on a replay, obviously the radar and any watches are dated. So be sure to check on the current weather conditions and the state of severe weather in your particular area by going to your local National Weather Service office or weather.gov. Let me just make sure those aren't winter. No, those look like winter storm watches that are up for parts of the Sierra Nevadas. And you still got some flood warnings going on in parts of Idaho, Montana, and on up into North Dakota as the snowmelt continues. And of course, in the east, aside from the red flag issues, you've got wind advisories all over the place in upstate New York and through New England and on up into Maine as that continues in some areas, not all. And also in that brownish area that you see, that's a fire weather watch that is up, that was put up for today, and that's likely going to be discontinued in about another hour or so. All right, so moving ahead, as far as the weather is concerned over the next couple of days, we've been talking about how everything has assumed this sort of typical spring pattern, and it really is playing out according to form from what I've seen. And I'm starting with the late afternoon GFS, so this will at least carry us into the weekend. So our storm, of course, is now off the screen here in another couple of hours on the map itself. Let me just make that a little bit bigger for you, and we'll move it away. High pressure coming in over Lake Superior. There's some chilly air that's going to gradually filter down during tomorrow and tomorrow night. It's not a very cold air, but it is chilly air. And of course, we're gradually going to be setting up an onshore flow here in my neck of the woods, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. In the meantime, you've got a weak low coming out of Oklahoma. It's really very hard to define. It's not a well-developed system at all. But you can see for tomorrow in the Gulf states, in that area of risk for severe weather, you've got a fairly strong inflow coming in from the Gulf of Mexico. So you got the seeds there planted for the possibility of some strong to severe thunderstorms. That's going to lift up to the northeast. That high goes into upstate New York, you're going to get a little bit of damming of cold air. So I think it's possible that you could see a little sleet in inland areas at the start Friday morning. A little shot of precip comes in early. The models all have some variation of this. I would just simply describe it as a last gasp of, one of the last gasps of winter that you're going to see, where you throw out a few ice pellets as precip runs into marginally cold air. But it is going to make for a fairly miserable day on Friday with this onshore flow, and we'll have rain Friday into Friday night. But after that, I think we're going to see some improvement for the weekend. Much of everywhere, at least east of the Mississippi on Saturday, depending on how quickly the precip gets out Friday night, and I think it'll probably get out a little faster than what the GFS has it. We should go to clouds and some sunshine. There's not really a strong onshore flow here at all. In fact, the winds go around more to the northwest or north, and that will at least allow for clouds to break up. And I think we could see temperatures in the 60s everywhere. So it looks like a pretty good day. And the next weather system, that energy that comes in from the west, and we've got, let me back it up. You can watch this system coming in on Friday into the west. There's energy being pushed eastward. Rain from almost down to Los Angeles, all the way up to Washington State to the Canadian border and beyond, with snow in the mountains. Now, this Pacific energy is going to be moving east, and we're going to get another low that's going to try to come out of the southern plains. But I think there's some time with higher pressure and a bit of a ridge along the east coast, so that we should be okay for Saturday and for the daytime Sunday. And that low is going to run up toward the western lakes. You're going to have the high anchoring in such a way that we are going to get into a bit of an onshore flow here Sunday night into Monday, and that's going to bring in rain and back perhaps into quote-unquote miserable conditions. The frontal boundary here looks like it's set up somewhere across Virginia, Maryland, and off the South Jersey coast. So from there south, it might actually be warmer, and we'll probably get into some thunderstorms from there north. We're talking about lots of low clouds and temperatures in many places probably not out of the 40s. And as far as this model run goes, we're into early Tuesday morning, and we still got precip going on. So I'm going to come back to this. We're going to switch to the upper air. I'm going to show you the northern hemispheric view here. And I think it's time. We're going to bring the paint box up in a second. But take a look at the area over near Greenland and back toward Europe. You're going to start to see an upper high building there. It's centered at this point. Time-wise, we are at Thursday. There's a bit of an upper high midway between England and Ireland. I'm sorry, England and Iceland, and then over to Greenland. And that upper high is going to strengthen and build back across Greenland by the time we get to the early part of next week. So this is really the first time. Can you think back during the winter months where we had a few occasions where the models were trying to show some kind of blocking pattern, and it never really materialized. We'll bring the close-up view up on the paint box, because blocking patterns tend to occur in the springtime. They show up in the winter, but there's much more variability going on in the wintertime. You've got too much going on. And in the spring, where you're starting to see a weakening of the polar jet and the polar vortex and the gradual warming of the atmosphere, of course, the jet is starting to retreat further to the north, you begin to see flows that are not quite as smooth. And in this particular instance, in the springtime, you start to get these blocks that tend to develop. And here it is. Here's the blocking high that is taking shape. And of course, what that effectively does is that it displaces the jet stream further to the south in the United States. You kind of see it here. You've got an upper low that has parked itself up near Newfoundland. So you do have bit of a cool flow coming down from eastern Canada into New England. My area is kind of on the border of this, and of course, you've got another upper low, another cutoff low out in the Atlantic, north of the Azores. So the jet stream, the strongest part of the jet stream, is actually suppressed southward down to about 40 north because of that blocking high. And the problem with this is that when you get these things that happen in the spring, everything starts to slow to a crawl in terms of the movement. And you begin to wonder sometimes when you get into one of these situations, is it ever going to break down? And that is that's when you wind up sitting in the Northeast, at least, and down into the Mid-Atlantic as well, where you wind up sitting in pretty much a miserable weather pattern for days at a time. Now, my feeling is that this block is probably going to last for a bit, and then after a week to 10 days, it'll probably break down, at least from what I've been seeing from some of the models of the last several days or more. But as we watch the upper area, you can see that blocking area where you've got the dark, that reddish, the reddish area up in northeastern Canada and over Greenland. There's your blocking high. And while it's up there, of course, everything is being forced underneath it, and eventually the block does break down. One of the things about blocking patterns is that they tend to be much more volatile. When we get into these patterns where the Pacific jet kind of locks itself up, it's there for weeks and weeks at a time. Blocks, on the other hand, are much more short-lived. Yeah, you could have an overall signature that can last for 5 or 6 weeks, but in terms of an actual strong blocking high, a week to 10 days maybe, and then they break down, as this one does, as we head toward the middle part of the month, and then it's gone, and we start to get into a bit more of a progressive flow where weather systems start moving along with a bit faster from west to east. So that at least is the plan. So the question is, in the short to medium term, is going to be, while we're sitting under this block, what exactly is going to be going on? Well, that's the big mystery through all of this. And I want you to take a look at the GFS's solution from earlier today, where we bring in our system for Friday. Then here comes the next one for Sunday night and Monday. Now, with the block in place, you'll notice that there's a high over James Bay. Yesterday, the high was pressed east-west, so the model was trying to actually force a surface low pretty far to the south. The European was not quite like this, and the GFS has kind of gone toward the European's idea to a certain extent. The higher pressures remain in eastern Canada because that blocking high is pushing westward, so the low, which moves up into Wisconsin, just kind of sits there and then gets stretched out. And what happens here in the east and in the northeast in particular is precip. And I know the GFS is actually showing frozen and freezing precip up in through central and northern New England. I suppose if there's one place where it could happen, that would be it. But in this type of a setup, at least from the standpoint of the GFS, it does suggest that we're going to have ocean problems here with the wind coming in off the water beginning Sunday night and lasting possibly into Wednesday of next week, because it's not until after that you finally kick that system out to the east, and gradually you get higher pressures that start to spread out across central Canada that takes over. It leads to a very, very cool pattern. And actually, I want to bring up the fact that back about a week or 10 days ago, when we were looking at some of the climate models, they were actually showing next week to be warmer than average throughout the east. And it's just not going to work out that way with this big blocking high. So this is why you got to be really cautious when you look at these climate models, because they often, they don't pick up on this sort of stuff. A lot of times the climate models, they'll show blocking and it doesn't happen. Then they don't show it and it does. So I think the best plan of attack here is just to remember that blocking is something that shows up a lot in the springtime probably more so in the spring than it does in the winter. And you're going to have to deal with it if you get into a situation like that. And that's at least what the GFS is implying for the next week to 10 days. And then after that, you start to see these weather systems go to that more progressive look, where systems start moving across from west to east, assuming that the block does break down. It's an interesting pattern overall. It makes for very, very tough forecasts for sure. And where you are with respect to the block is very important as well, because if you're in a good spot, you can actually benefit from the pattern, and when you wind up being dry for most of the time. But that's not something that happens all that often. I want to take a look at some of the, obviously there's going to be temperature issues with all of this, and running back on the temperature anomalies. Of course, we're seeing temperatures today that were above average, getting close to near average for Thursday and Friday. Here's your battle for Friday. The below normal areas in the northeast, above south of the frontal boundary, and we carry it into Saturday. Now, of course, if we're going to break out into some sun Saturday, it should warm up nicely. I think Saturday we could be in the 60s, and in some cases well up into the 60s. Sunday also milder than average, and now, of course, you start to play into the block. If you look at the above normal, the below normal temperatures up in eastern Canada and in northern New England, how they drop southward. That's your block in action. That's your marine layer getting involved, and that kind of hangs around for much of next week. This was supposed to be a week where temperatures were going to run above average, and it's just not going to be the case. I'm taking you to Sunday, April 14th, and if this is correct, all of the east is below average, and you have to wait till later in the forecast period, after the 16th or 17th, where you finally break the block down and you start to bring the temperatures up again. The rainfall, I'm going to do both coasts here, so just we'll start in the east. And where is it? I guess we can do total accumulated precip. Now, with this pattern in action, this looks to be a pretty wet period over the next, I'm going to just go out 10 days. There you go. So for 10 days. So you're looking at the models generating up to several inches or more of rain across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York State, and through southern and central New England, less as you go to the north. And there's ample precip throughout much of the southeast, the Gulf states, and back into East Texas, on the order of several inches or more. Florida getting a couple of inches of precip out of this. And in the west, with what's going on, you're still getting stuff coming in from off the Pacific. So it looks like the heavy rain areas will be mostly in Northern California, and particularly into Oregon and Washington, where we could see several to many inches of rain coming out from the pattern that we're getting into. A lot of the nation is actually going to participate in precip here. The southwest is dry for the most part, but a lot of the country is going to be wet going forward. It looks like it would be above average precip up in the northwest. The northwestern half of the western part of the U.S., and pretty much everywhere east of the Rockies, and definitely everywhere east of the Mississippi, we're looking at above average precip going forward. Why don't we put up the snowfall maps, because we're not going to be using these for that much longer. And in the west, over the next 10 days, much of this, of course, in the mountains in the Sierra Nevadas and in the Wasatch, Siskiyous, back over into the Rockies, doing pretty well here. And in the east, which we know to always use these with caution, but just in a general sense, I would ignore the actual specific amounts being generated. That's a short range issue. And I also think that southern edge there, that's actually being shown by the precip coming in for Friday morning. But going out through the next 10 days, I guess there'll be some snows well up into upstate New York, and for central and northern New England, still plenty of time for stuff to happen, but not really a whole lot going on back over toward the Great Lakes. Just on the short range again, I love the NAM snow maps, by the way. But just on the short range, with regards to Thursday night, Friday morning, that high, that's chilly air, and here comes that precip. So this is why the model generates this run actually shows less of it, but it does show an area of sleet and then some sleet and some snow up into through northern Maine. I think it might be a little bit more than what's being indicated here. Not a whole lot more, but it might be just a little bit more bullish than what the 18Z NAM has suggested. And with regards to the severe weather for tomorrow in the lower Mississippi Valley and in the Gulf states, you can see the NAM is pretty busy here with some showers and thunderstorms. This is later tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow night, moving across Louisiana, Mississippi, and then eventually getting into Alabama. Not quite as vibrant with the severe with the showers and storms in the southeast for Friday, although the risk is probably there that there could be some thunderstorms running around. So, this is the time of year where we're sort of in between everything. The winter season is pretty much done. The hurricane season is still a couple of months away. So we're just going to have to deal with whatever's thrown in front of us on a day-to-day basis. We did get that little surprise cyclone that happened, yesterday, the way it developed, and thankfully it did stay offshore. It's amazing that it took that shot out to the east, just as the models were showing that northern shortwave wasn't going to be able to grab onto it or lift it up to the north along the coast. So it kicked it out to the east first, and then moved it northward from there. Alfred Phillips, Chuck Cardillo, Seth Dominus, Snowy 23. Nice to see everybody on board. Amy Hogan, Scott Briller, Mahogany was on tonight. She hasn't been on in a while. Good to see you. Timothy Veltman, Rick 8013. How'd you do yesterday with that storm passing just off the Outer Banks with the rain? I would guess a couple of inches of rain at least. And by the way, Charlotte, North Carolina got a tenth of an inch of snow. And it's only one of a handful of times that they've seen snow there in the month of April. I just want to make sure that I get everybody here for the big hello. Johnny Quest, rain coming back for you soon. The pattern getting wet. Russ Woodward, nice to see you on board. Welcome, Michael Bologna. You can the 82 Blizzard Redux out of the block. Yes, nah, I don't think it. Not going to happen this time around. Last year and in some of the prior year Aprils that we've had, where we've gotten these late season snows, you sort of sensed it from the upper air going into the month that this was going to happen. You don't really sense that this time around. It's just not. It's just not there. It seems like the jet stream in the upper atmosphere is breaking down the way it would, quote unquote, normally would during the month of April. I don't really see anything that changes my mind as far as that is concerned, and there's not a whole lot of room here for something crazy to happen. At least from what I'm seeing, what I'm seeing right now. Jason Schaefer. That warm front, yeah, that's another thing. That's a good point about this time of year. One of the things you got to be really careful about with warm fronts moving their way up the eastern seaboard is they love to get hung up. And you think they're going to go by, and they never do. And if you're on the wrong side of that warm front, you've got problems. So the models just don't handle that very well. I think the NAM probably does the better job with regards to that. I just want to take a look. Let me go back to just took a look at the NAM temperatures. I mean, this is Friday. I'll get a little closer. We can see where the warm air is. This is Friday morning at 11 o'clock. So, but I'll bring it up. We'll go to the tighter view. I mean, we're talking by Friday morning, the freezing line is not really that far away, and we've got temperatures in the 30s in inland areas into Friday night. Now that might be a bit over. That's a bit overdone in my view. But you'll notice that the NAB does, when this whole thing does pull out, it warms up fairly quickly on Saturday. We do have 50s and 60s moving up, and I think it might be higher than that. And you've got 60s down into Maryland and Virginia, 70s in North Carolina. A lot of how the temperatures on Saturday are really going to be dependent on clouds getting out of the way. And sometimes they don't get out of the way as quick as you'd like when you're coming out of a situation where you're dealing with an onshore flow. We don't go out far enough for Sunday. Just kind of curious, as the GFS was pushing 60. The GFS pushes 60s here on Saturday all the way up into New England, all the way up into Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire and even into southwestern Maine. You've got 60s well into the 60s, and this is where my head's at for Saturday, and 70s pushing up through Virginia and maybe into Maryland and Delaware. Sunday, we're looking, I think it's 60s. Sunday, the issue is, where's the wind? What's the wind direction going to be? Because as the day wears on, we're probably going to have some kind of a sea breeze develop. And then back we go to Monday. Now we're at Monday afternoon, and we're in the 30s and low 40s because, again, the GFS has got this weather system, this front, and the onshore flow down to the south. It's got the warm front pinched down into southernmost New Jersey. You've got 60s in Delaware, 70s in Virginia. And by Tuesday, it tries to move up the 70s up into central New Jersey. But look at not that far away. You're looking at 40s, low 40s in southern Connecticut. This is at 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. Low 40s in southern Connecticut and the Hudson Valley. Mid 70s down in central and south Jersey, down into Delaware. So how important is it to get that warm front right in a forecast? I'm forecasting in this zone. I'm going to go for highs of what, from 41 to 77. and indeed, if you look at New Jersey in a situation like this, if a warm front gets pinched, you're talking about highs up in northwest Jersey only in the low 40s, and highs in southern New Jersey in the mid to upper 70s. That's pretty crazy. Here's the new 18Z GFS. We'll get you on the closer view. This is for Sunday night and Monday. So your frontal boundary here is to the south. This, in a way, looks like what we're going through for Friday. Frontal boundary to the south, low pressure in Ohio. There's a warm front that extends from there right along the Pennsylvania-Maryland line and then cuts across southern New Jersey south of 195. Here it is Tuesday morning, and then Tuesday afternoon it tries to pivot that front northward, but that high to the north and the block is going to be forcing it in the other direction. This is going to be a forecast nightmare for Monday and Tuesday of next week. Here on the wider view, because the GFS keeps trying to shove the lower pressures along the warm front, which if you've got the block kind of makes sense. This low that runs up to Wisconsin can't really keep going, so it just dies out, and then you get a new low that forms in eastern Ohio with the warm front to the east, and then that low doesn't go anywhere, and then it reforms off the New Jersey coast and then moves out to the northeast south of Nova Scotia. That's your block in action, and it ought to be fun by the time we get there in the next week to try to figure out just exactly how that is all going to play out. All right, folks, going to wrap it up here at this point. We're going to have a Joe and Joe weather show tonight at 9:25 Eastern Time on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. So be sure and tune in if you can. If not, if you're not on Facebook, I will. I didn't remember to do it this morning, but I will make a mental note to do it for tomorrow morning, so you can watch the replay. And for those of you who are interested in a more complete weather experience, don't forget I do have a subscription platform on Patreon. It's just $2 a month, and you get a lot of extra stuff, including the ability to message me at just about any time, and I do get back to you in a timely fashion. Plus we do extra posts, extra videos, and more, extra live streams. So do consider it as a great way to support my channel and all the things I'm doing. And don't forget, if you haven't downloaded it already, although many of you have, but for those of you who are new, I do have my free weather app that works for all mobile devices, be it Android or iPhone. So there's the link for that. You can download it on your mobile device, and you can actually watch the live stream from the app itself. And I am working on a second app at the moment. We'll have more on that in the coming. Hopefully, it's just weeks, and we don't have the long delay like we did last time. But I think now that we know what we need to do in order to get through the bureaucracies of Google and Apple, the fingers crossed, the approval process should be a bit faster. All right, have a great evening, everybody. Hopefully, to see you later tonight on Facebook for the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Good night.